Are you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah. And so welcome to episode 2 of SLT Decisions. And today is the day we actually get to talk to Jordana about her life and how she kind of grew up in her career. But we were just on this little rant, which we actually, let's just say it's snowing sideways outside, and you've got to go to an event tonight, which you wish you didn't set up.
I know. It's, when you spend so many years in corporate going to events, you just get into the swing of things. This is just part of the job. This is what I do. You network, you meet people, you grab something to eat, you have 5-minute conversations with everybody, and that's it. But when you get out of the swing of things and then you have to get back into it, you book it a few weeks out and then it comes and you're like, oh man, what else could I be doing to not do this?
Why the fuck did I do this?
Please no. Yeah, please can I do something else? I know. It's brutal. It absolutely is. And you know what? Inevitably, when you get there, you're like, okay, this isn't so bad most of the time. You stay for a little bit, you have some conversations, you're out.
Yeah. And I think what it really comes down to, though, is that understanding how to utilize these events, and to navigate them and to use them to the best of your ability to do whatever you want to do from them is what really should be the focus, right?
Yeah.
Quite often I'm the same way. I get fixated on, oh my God, why did I do this to myself? I got to go to another event and I don't want to go. I'd rather just stay home and watch Netflix.
I'm texting my wife and I'm like, I really don't feel like going. And she's just like, I can tell that there's an annoyance in her response because she's just like, you never like these things. So in her mind, she's just like, why put yourself through this? Right. Yep.
Well, we're going to come back to this on another episode, and we're going to talk about this specifically and how we can make it better. So, yeah, but good rant.
Yep. Good.
But we're here to talk about you, and we're here to talk about you and your career and kind of how you grew up and things like that.
Yeah.
And there's lots of places to start, but I'm actually going to say just, hey, Jordana, let's start where you feel most comfortable in your career, where you felt that, maybe you came out of school, maybe, I don't know. Let's start there.
Yeah. And, I always envy people who knew what they wanted to do from the time that they were in grade school, high school, whatever it is, right? Like whatever the moment was where you said, that's what I want to do. Or if you grew up in a family business and your destiny was to, carry on in that path. But I just was all over the place. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had a very hard time nailing down even the subjects that I liked. And I don't know about you, Jeff, but when I went to high school, we had guidance counselors. And with guidance counselors, unless you were going to university, they basically thought, college is like a very transactional way of learning things. And if you want to be a plumber or an electrician, then that's fine. But otherwise, you go to university, you get university educated, and you move on. And so for me, none of these paths made sense. But I can tell you one thing, I hated school. I hated every part of school.
Me too.
Yeah. And it's not that I did poorly or I did well. It's just that all I wanted to do was get out and work. I remember looking at people out the window who were like wearing suits going to work, being like, I just want to do that and make some money. And that was really all that I did. But, my career path looks nothing like, a straight line up. It's all over the place. The industries that I've worked in, vary from media to supply chain, logistics, funeral services, insurance.
What?
Oh, God.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Back it up a minute here. What? Funeral services?
What
happened there?
When I was a teenager, I did a co-op at a funeral home and absolutely loved it. I thought, there were two things that I loved. Number one, they got to wear suits every day, and I thought that was pretty cool. And number two was you really were making connections with individuals on a daily basis at a time when they needed you most. And so I embarked on a career in funeral services. I started to go to Humber College, which is, I believe, the only English-speaking school in Ontario to do that. And then I got scared because I looked around and I thought, okay, crap, I'm 20 years old. What happens when I'm 40 and I don't want to do this anymore? Like, what job do I go to apply to? And I say, I embalm people for a living. And they're like, great, like we have a space for you. Yeah. So I left, and here I am, 40 plus, and that is still the industry that has the most, remarkable imprint on me. But I went to school for human resources management. I got a job very quickly in a steel factory in Cambridge, and also very quickly found out that human resources was nothing what I thought it was. And you have this interpretation of HR being this wonderful department that, pats people on the back and helps them to progress in their career. And then when you get into it, you realize that it's the antithesis of that. And there's no offense to anybody that's in HR. Really, your role is to protect the assets of the company, protect the leadership of the company, the shareholders of the company. And it's evolving over time, especially in the last few years. But HR people themselves are struggling to have a seat at the leadership table and have their voices heard.
You know what? The one thing I will say to that point is, in my entire career, HR never had a spot at the table.
No.
And they might have sat in the room, but the conversation never went to, oh, should we get a new payroll system? Or should we talk about performance management and how we're doing that?
No, you just looked at them and you were like, can we fire this person? Can we do that? And that was it. And they were always the no. It was like they were the police and you were like, oh God, Susie, just leave, right? Like you just wanted to hear what you could and couldn't do. But like HR has all of this data that they're not utilizing to have a seat at the table to inform the leadership team.
Agreed.
Yeah.
In fact, in my career, I was always around, oh my God, I just got another call from HR. What infraction has happened now?
Yeah.
And I know, Jordana, you have a style.
Yeah.
You and I go back in our careers, so you have a style and things like that. Let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about your style, and kind of how you've grown up in your career, some of the things that have challenged you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And really kind of, taking you in a direction where you are today.
I always struggle with the question as to what your leadership style is, because I can't put a particular adjective in front of it. But what I can tell you is the leadership style that I tested that I found to be the most ineffective was the collaborative leadership style. So where you're gathering opinions and you're asking people, what their thoughts are. And that's not to say that you're not still doing that. But when you do that, when you're crowdsourcing what you should be doing as a leader, people are looking at you like, do you know what you're doing? Like I once had a rep that said to me, and I love this feedback. She said, you're giving me too much information and it's distracting me from what I need to do. And wow, did I listen to that and say, great, this is a great point, right? Like you need to be able to be decisive with the information that you have, and you need to be able to set out a plan, because ultimately people are looking at you and they're saying, what's the plan? Do you believe in the plan? Are you aligned? Like, what is it? And what do you want me to do? People just want clarity. So I evolved over time to just make sure that I was being very, very clear in my communication and still listening, but also being directive.
Interesting statement. And me too. I'm with you. Okay. Let's just take a little bit of a corner here, because you talk about the directive, being in control, so on and so forth. The world we live in today is not that. The world we live in today is, oh no, I want to have part of this discussion. Oh, you're going to put in performance management? What are the words that you're going to do to performance manage me? And you know what I mean? Like there's all of this, I want to be part of the debate. And so this thought that you've just stated around people want that control, I am in agreement, although there is a lot of stuff going on in the world right now that is completely, on the opposite side of that thinking.
Yeah. I use this as an example when I speak to a lot of prospective clients in my current business, which is without fail, the people that I speak to that are under 30 years old, and mostly kind of under 26, 27 years old, they have a different way of thinking about the corporate world than I do and did, and most people that are my age and beyond, which was this respectful way of being in the workplace and saying, I'm going to pay my dues. I'm going to, make sure that I'm, doing what I'm told so that I can get to this point. And then there's this generation, which I absolutely am enamored with and adore, because they're sitting there and they're telling me, you know what? Screw you, screw your generation. So here's the things that you have burdened me with: climate change, war, political instability. I can't have a family because I can't afford it. I can barely afford to pay my rent. I can barely afford food. I probably am not going to stay at a company for longer than 2 to 3 years now, because I need to make more money. So I have to go somewhere else, get career progression. Oh, and by the way, you want me to respect you? I don't think so. So that generation, when they're sitting down and they're doing exactly what you said, which is, no, I want to be part of this. I want to be part of my growth. I want to be part of what's going on. I want you to be transparent. It didn't exist in that way when I was in corporate. It just didn't.
No, it didn't. No. Command control, right?
Yeah.
That was really kind of the direction that we grew up in. And I think it's interesting today of the variance that people have, though, in this type of, let's call it a leadership style. Yeah. And how people are trying to manage this leadership style, because I don't feel like we've found the goalpost yet. In fact, I feel like it's moving all the time. And there's, in my opinion, there's got to be some limits that allow a leader to lead and be effective, but not be impacting someone in some way, shape, or form, because we've got all these things out here that we're worried about. And we really haven't assembled them. And maybe that's just from structure that you went through and I went through. Like, what do you think about that?
I don't envy the sales leaders in corporations today. I really, really don't. Being a sales leader, kind of pre-2020, in general, whether you were working for a startup or a large company, you kind of all did the same things, right? You're responsible for forecasting, hiring, training, coaching, emerging into, new markets, and, that kind of thing, pipeline reviews. I remember being on the train back and forth to Toronto all the time and hearing a variety of people talking about their pipeline reviews on their cell phones. And I'd just be, did you put it in Salesforce? And I'd be like, oh God, please, no, I can't even commute home without listening to this.
It's like, if someone fucking says Salesforce once more, I'm going to you know what I mean? No, I didn't put it in Salesforce. And what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Your tombstone will say it's not in Salesforce. Screw off. But I will tell you now, being a sales leader, you still have all of those things. Plus, you have to, you're a therapist. You have to understand bias. You have to, whether your organization believes in diversity, equity, and inclusivity initiatives, if you have someone on your team who is not white, you have to understand what that means. You have to be cautious with everything that is coming out of your mouth, because someone is listening. So you don't have the benefit of saying, I just didn't know that. I was ignorant to that. No. You don't have that, because your intent isn't as important anymore as the outcome and the execution of it. It's not an easy job.
No. And let me give you a real quick example, because I find myself doing this today. I could be on with the sales team, and there's different cultures around the team, and I avoid saying black and white. And I actually say, this is not a black and white situation. I would say this is a binary situation. It's a 1 or a 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm afraid, like, not afraid, but there's this, I don't know. I don't know. It's almost like I don't want to offend people, because of what's going, like, my mind's been so conditioned from what I learned, like you learned. Yeah. And now it's so different. Like, how do you deal with that today, Jordana? Because you're also, you're running a recruitment organization. You're a leader, not only with that recruitment organization, but you're also a leader with your customers. Yeah. Right? You're also a leader with the candidates. And so you must come across this on a regular basis.
I do. And I think, the difference is, I am not a visible minority, but I am a diverse individual being gay. And when I grew up in the workforce, no one talked about being gay. And then when people found out that I was gay, there would be a variety of different, actions. I was having this conversation with someone a while ago. When someone hates you just for who you are, whether you're gay, whether you're black, whether you have an accent, I don't care. When someone hates you just for that being, there's a grit and an anger in you because of that. And so you're constantly on guard. And so, when I'm meeting with candidates and talking to candidates, or when I'm meeting with clients and speaking to clients, my frame of reference is going to be different than the frame of reference of a 55, 60-year-old white male. Because, not only am I taking the time on a daily basis to educate myself, and I have so much more to learn, but I'm just so much more, I have a heightened sense of awareness of when something is happening, and being able, the old saying, kind of like read the room, right? Like there were many, many different cocktail events and networking events that I was at where someone would have a drink or two, and then all of a sudden the conversation would turn into my relationship, my sexual activity, who mows the lawn. Oh, I like Ellen. And I'm like, you got it. What the is this a joke? Like, are you kidding me? And it's the same thing that, visible minorities, I remember being in a room and someone saying to, somebody who was from Pakistan, they're like, oh yeah, I watched Slumdog Millionaire. It's like, what the F? Like, so, really the onus is on you, non-minority person, to really have a heightened sense of awareness and educate yourself.
Yeah. And I think that 100%, I feel that responsibility myself, right? Because I grew up in a completely different generation. In fact, when I first met you, I didn't know you were gay.
Yeah.
You didn't tell me that. I think it came out in a conversation, because I think you were talking about your partner or something like that.
I think I wore my Cher t-shirt under my blazer one day, and you were like, I get it now.
Yeah. Well, not sure if I got it, but I wonder, do you remember, did I change towards you? I don't know. I don't remember, but
no, you didn't. For the most part, the people that I reported into in my career, did not have a differing opinion when they found that out. I feel like I was treated equitably, for the exception of one company that I worked at. But that actually, there's some great companies that I've worked for, Jeff. And then there is one company that I wish I never even entered into. And I don't mind naming them. I mean, Auto Trader, for all intents and purposes, was an amazing company. We went through an acquisition. We went through a tough time in being able to, decrease the workforce and restructure the workforce, which there were some horrible decisions that were made and some great ones. Every job I've ever had, I've made horrible decisions and I made great decisions. And I do that today. Pure Leader was a great company that I worked for with great leadership. I worked for a startup called Primacy. That was a great company, and I have some lifelong friendships. But when I worked for Pet Health, that was the worst company I've ever worked for. There was no.
I forgot you worked there. That's
I
right.
did. Yeah. And what was funny is in the interview process, I remember removing myself from the process, and the person who I reported into came back and said, no, I really think you should do this. And from day one, I was set up to fail. I was set up to take over from a beloved, VP of sales who ran out of the company after she'd been there for many, many years within 6 months. I had a conversation with my boss about fertility, where she had, she knew that was something my wife and I were struggling with. And she had said, oh, at the last company I was at, I had a miscarriage, went and bled out at the hospital, came back to work and did a keynote. I'm like, this is not hero status. And so as leaders, like we need to do better with our people. And I think a lot of people struggle, especially of a certain generation, with like, nope, this is work you, this is personal you. No, I'm sorry. It is all blended now. You got to understand work me and personal me.
Yeah. And I think that is a great statement. And I think part of the challenge though, Jordana, and is when you have the personal me, then your true person comes out. And there's there's things that you've just done your entire life that other people don't understand.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the challenge, is that it's almost, I'm protecting myself, because I may have bias, I may have these different things, and I'm not sure how to handle that.
Yeah.
And I want to be respectful, and so I don't know about your wife, but my wife says, Jeff, stop talking. right? That's the
I hear that a lot.
Yeah, shut your friggin' mouth, okay?
Yeah.
Your brain does not have a filter right now.
Yeah.
Do you find that? Do you find that you struggle with situations like that?
I do. I know that I can, and let's call it what it is. It's oversharing, right? And I know that I can overshare. I tell a lot about my personal life, about, work struggles that I have gone through, about work successes. There's a very specific reason that I do it. And that specific reason is I know so many people are struggling with work, with life, with mental health, especially in sales, because sales is such a roller coaster. When you're great, everybody loves you, you're making a lot of money, things are going really well, you're winning awards, and when, you have that bad month, it's like everybody forgets who that person was in the previous month. I remember working for Shutterstock, and, my VP, who had started the same day as I did, pulled me aside after I'd had 3 forecasting sessions that were pieces of crap and I was so far off. And she's like, yeah, I'm having a hard time defending you now at the C level. So I just want you to be aware that, I can't protect you forever. And it's like, okay. You set me and my department up with, a target that was 3 times what we've ever accomplished. And I mean, that was the worst decision I ever made, was accepting that target. I remember walking into a boardroom and hearing them say, you just got to accept this. And I watched half of my team just leave because they weren't accepting it. And so I feel as though there are lessons that are learned. And if you don't want to hear it, you're going to tell me to shut up and you're going to turn me off. And that's okay. But the messages that I get on LinkedIn on a daily basis from people who are like, thank God you said that. Thank God you're saying this. What you said in this post resonated me. I was struggling with this. That it's cathartic for me. Yes, I'm not going to lie, but that means more to me than any money that I'm making, because someone then knows that someone has gone through what they've been through. You're not alone, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And they're challenging because you're going to get people are always going to judge.
Yeah,
about multiple different things.
Yeah,
I think the bigger challenge in all of this, in this whole oversharing, is there are leadership styles that do extremely well by having transparency, right? Transparency, precision, and performance, right? Mm-hmm. So those things I've found have been cornerstones of what I know about you in your career and people that have worked with you, so on and so forth. And we're bringing those all together, I think, is a real challenge today.
Yeah.
Right? Because we talked about oversharing. We've also talked about performance.
Yeah.
You mentioned top down versus bottom up, right? Top down is, this is your fucking target. This is what you're going to do. And if you don't like it, go sell bread somewhere else.
Yep.
That's what you get.
Yeah.
And yet below you, your team is going, Jordana, why did you agree to this? This is crazy.
Yeah.
You know we're not going to get to that number.
Yeah. That.
Okay. And so let's talk about that. How do you use transparency and communication to rally a team to something that you all agree is potentially not achievable?
Yeah.
But might be achievable if we were perfect, if all things lined up. If I threw that at you, how would you do that?
And that's a very big distinction, because what happened at Shutterstock was I didn't believe in it, and neither did the peers around me. And the management team, God bless them, was looking at me like, you might be new to this industry, but we're never going to be able to achieve this. So there's a difference between you believe that there's a chance that this can happen, or you don't believe there's a chance that this is going to happen. And I think on the latter, if you truly don't, you need to fight, because ultimately you're going to watch people walk out the door and you're going to walk out the door, right? And if you're not aligned, I talk about this all the time with, the companies when we do an intake with them. If HR isn't aligned with the hiring manager, then what's going to happen is HR is going to tell me this is the type of candidate that you want. I'm going to go and present those candidates, and the hiring manager is going to say, what the hell is this? I don't want to meet with people like this. So, for me, the best leaders that I had were the leaders who would be open about the fact that here's what happened at that boardroom, right? But here's why this number is so important. And it's not corporate greed, and it wasn't ever corporate greed with the leaders that I knew that did it really well. It could have to do with eroding market share. It could have to do with, they were coming out with a new product or a new solution. And I think when you're rallying your team around that, if you have those data points to be able to say, here's how we're going to get to it versus, just give me a number. My number's $10 million. Go get it. Right? Like, no, that's not helpful. Sit down and come up with a plan with me of how I'm going to get that. Right. And then it's those constant check-ins. How are you doing? How are we progressing? What do you need from me? You have to be able to show yourself as a leader that's going to remove roadblocks for your team. Right. So to me, the best leaders I've ever had were able to do that.
I think that's a critical distinction, simply because we as a corporate society, we haven't gotten out of that top-down mentality and you must achieve this.
Yeah.
And most leaders, that are, maybe they're entrepreneurial types, they're founders, CEOs, they're all working on this high of, yes, we can get here. Yes. But they have no foundation and nothing built around how they're going to get there. And yet they bring in sales individuals, sales leaders that have great pedigree, and they go, well, they've done it somewhere else, or they've been successful, so we're just going to shove them in there, and they'll just make it happen.
Yep.
And I think that there's two things that happen there. One is the person that got shoved into it, that took the job, made a fatal error.
Yeah.
And the person who hired them made a fatal error, right? Because, hey, no, I'll take the job. I got it. We'll knock this out of the park, with no reality of what knocking it out of the park even meant.
Yeah.
And someone else is who's running that business is looking at you and going, oh my God, Jordana's going to be our savior. She's going to come in and do it. And after a month of things not kind of changing, all of a sudden that just starts to melt away.
Do you know how many times that happened to me?
I know. So tell us, tell me, give me one example. Give me a good example of where that happened.
Shutterstock was the perfect example. I was brought into Shutterstock at the same time as my VP, which was a month before year end, and the forecast was already set. The CRO was new to the company. The team had just gone through a massive acquisition. There was a VP before me that was very well liked who had left. And so I remember joining and doing skip levels and one-on-ones, and people were like, oh, we're so excited that you're here. We're going to get this. This is going to change. That's going to change. And I was really excited about it too. And then when I sat down with the leadership team to go over the numbers and to understand that number was predicated upon just being able to get to that number. It wasn't predicated upon, we have this new technology, we have these new solutions. Actually, it was the exact opposite. Revenue was being eroded by a series of decisions that were made, because when you've got, I'm just going to say it, you can hate me for it, but when a CFO is running a company, I've never seen that be successful, at least not in the companies that I've worked in. Because there isn't an understanding of what happens in the market. You know what? To any leader, if you've never been out with your sales team, get in the car, get on the phone, go out with the sales team, see what they do on the phone, see what they deal with day in and day out. So, for me, after about a month and a half in that role, I realized I'm not going to be the person that they need me to be. And I realized that the second that I took that number. So then my mindset shifted into, okay, how can I at the very least make working here livable while we get through this year?
So let me ask you this question. So first question is, how long did you stay there?
Just less than a year, but I mentally checked out after 6 months.
Okay. I was going to say, but even at that, you knew within 30 to 45 days, oh my God.
I think I knew within a week.
I'm on a collision course to disaster.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and save face.
Yeah.
I'm going to do what I can do.
Yeah.
How should we as leaders deal with that? Because I've done the exact same thing you have.
So that is the $1 million question. I have had so many people call me in the last year that went, and you know what? Inevitably, it seems to be a lot of startups. And the call goes like this: Jordana, I left this company. I had been there for a few years. I came here. I thought this. I was told this. I'm here. It's been a few weeks. It's not that. What do I do?
Well, they actually say, Jordana, it's a complete cluster. This is a shit show.
Yeah.
The founder and CEO is like crazy. And I don't know how I'm going to manage each and every day, but I love my team.
Yeah. And there's this sense, I can tell in the individual, there's this sense of dread, remorse, fear. Like, it's all of these feelings that people are going through where they're like, oh my God, I made a mistake, right? Like, how do I fix this? And I'm going to tell you what my advice is, and it might not be well received, and that's okay. But my advice is get out. Get out.
Yep.
There wasn't one time in my career where I said, no, I'm going to dig my heels in and I'm going to make this better, where it was. I should have gotten out for my own mental health, for the mental health and the success of my team, for the leadership team, because what inevitably happens is you become misaligned with what's happening in the culture, and your team, don't think for a second, doesn't see that in you. They absolutely do. So my advice to those people who call me and say that is, if you can't sit down with the CEO or the founder of the company and have an honest conversation with them, then get out. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think couldn't have been said better. I think the second part of that is that going into these organizations, if you recognize early on that you are the shiny object, you are the one they're going, oh my God, I'm so excited to have you in here. And you look around at other people in the organization, if they have lost control of their role, then you know you're working in an organization where you're more than likely going to lose control of your role too.
Yeah.
Simply because the CEO, founder, whomever it might be, has a specific style of managing, and they haven't gotten to that point to allow the people that with strength to actually lead without them getting in the middle.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you know what, Jeff, what I tell candidates who are sitting on the fence with accepting an offer, because a lot of times candidates who I'm not even representing will reach out to me on LinkedIn and say, hey, can I go over an offer with you? And it's like, I don't know you. I don't know the company. I don't know where you came from. And so, it's a very odd request every time I receive it. But the one piece of advice that I always give, and I won't back away from this advice, is if you have the opportunity to speak at somebody speak to someone who recently left the company, especially if it was the person that was in your role, call them, reach out to them. You don't need the company's permission to be able to do that. Find out who it was and call them. And listen to them. And it's like any other review. It's like, I always say this, if you go and you look at a restaurant review and you see that one person had a bad experience, take a chance. But if 25 people say that they ate hair in the food, you're going to go there and you're probably going to get hair in the food. So reach out to someone, see what they say, and then make your decision.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more with that. Been there myself. We're getting here on time. So I wanted to, last thing, what's your, if you could provide advice, we've talked about a lot today, so I've kind of had you running around, but if you could provide advice to people that are listening today on your career and maybe some of the challenges you had and how you might have done it a little bit differently, what would that be?
So my career should not be anything that anybody looks to with any sense of admiration. So please don't use my career as an example of that. My lessons learned are vast, but I think the advice that I give to people on a regular basis, and this isn't a shameless plug, but really the motto of do something different today is it stems from the fact that, if you're in a job and you find that it's hard to get up, you don't want to go in, you don't like your boss, you don't like the culture, get out, go do something different. Life is too short to stay there. And I hate that saying, but you really need to do something differently. And I say this to HR managers. If you're working with a recruitment agency partner and they're bringing you the same thing or they're not communicating with you, do something different, right? So my advice to people is just don't stop looking at this as an amount of time that I have to stay at a company. It's like a friggin' prison sentence. I just got to stay there for a year. I got to stay there for a year, and then it's going to look good on a resume. But at what cost are you doing that? And so for me, where I say don't look at my career and say it's any admiration, is because the second I got an inkling that's like, I'm not going to be happy here, I left. And there were consequences to that. There were consequences from myself and consequences on my team. So that's my advice.
It's all good. It's good advice. Hey, we've all been there, all done that. Another episode of SLT Decisions in the books. Thanks for being open with us today. It's really, really good. And I know the next one that we're actually going to go through, we're going to have someone sitting in between us. So
thank God we have a guest.
Yeah, we're going to have a guest. We're going to be the two ferns. Now that everyone knows us, oh my God, watch out.
Yep.
It's going to be a little crazy. All right. Thanks very much,
Jeff.
Jordana.
Thanks, Jeff.